Hey guys, Buffett Gaming back today, bringing out a video, and today we're going to go through the 5 new specials that were showcased today in the Battlefield information drops. We have 5 new specials to go through, as well as a lot of information that was revealed over on the Battlefield blog, what they learned from the beta, all the changes that are being made, as well as a lot of new features that just were missing from the beta version of the game, which will be in the final version of the game come November 12th and November 19th. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. And first off with the specialist trailer here, we'll pick this up, and we have 5 new specialists here. The first one that we see here is going to be Navin Rao. So his place of birth or origin is going to be India. He is a subclass recon, and his abilities are going to be, his speciality will be cyber warfare suit. This is going to allow him to scramble enemy vehicles and systems, and it'll disable the dogs, etc. And then the Trojan network is allow him to hack into enemy systems for intel on the map. So you can see his specialities and traits that work there. We also have the Santiago Dozer Espinoza from Mexico. He's going to be an assault subclass. We see the MP9 in action here, the Brugger and Thalma MP9. We also have, for his abilities, we can see here he has the ballistic shield, which is pretty obvious, basically just a riot shield. And then he also has blast resistant, which will allow him to take more damage from explosives. Next up, we have Emma Sundance Roser from France, and she's subclass Assault. Now, she has the wingsuit here, number 1. You can see her just swooping in, covering a lot of distance with this. This thing actually looks really fun. This is going to make for some very interesting gameplay. And here we see what I believe is the Saga 12 in action here. In-game, it has a different name, though. She also has here for her speciality, or her trait, her special trait here, the Smart Explosive. So this ranges from scatter grenades to micro drones. She can switch up there, and you see that kind of honing in on that little bird and blowing it up. Next up, we see Jisoo Pak from South Korea, subclass Recon. And for her special abilities here, she has Threat Protection, which is going to allow her to see enemies through walls, basically. Or no, the Threat Protection will allow her to know where she's being shot from, and then she also allow you to hone in on whoever's shooting you in that case. And then you have the X scanner, which allows you to see through walls. Then we have Constantine Angel from Romania, subclass Support, and he has some very special abilities here, being the Loadout Crate, which you'll see him calling, as well as Trauma Specialist here that you see with the paddles. So Trauma Specialist bringing back the med paddles, typical Assault or Medic class from the previous Battlefield games. And then here we see a Loadout Crate coming in, so you can switch up your loadout on the fly. Now we see here the NC-42 Assault Rifle. I went in very in-depth with this yesterday in a video as to what this weapon could be. And here in the gameplay, we do see some very good new information with this. So the AC-42 here, Optimont something of 2042. It appears to be configured in a 3-round burst option here, probably firing what appears to be, just judging by the mag reload, what I can see from the bullet, I'm going to go ahead and guess it's 7.62 by 39, or it could be a new caliber as well. Maybe this is compatible with 6.8 by 51. But if you slow down that reload animation, that looks like a 7.62. Again, 3-round burst, so it appears to be 3-round burst, but it only looks like it's firing 1. So it appears to be almost the same hyperburst system from the AN-94. And if it does have the ability perhaps to go full auto, the way the barrel configuration looks and the weapon icon appears to be something very similar to the recoil mitigation system on the AK-107 series of weapons. So we'll have to wait and see what that weapon really is. Again, taking a lot of cues from the Tavor. Next up here, we see the Comoros making a return. So we didn't have this in the beta. I know a lot of people were wondering where this was. The Comoros finally back, and this one looks to be really, really good. Very in-depth. There's a lot of sub things here you can do. I know the Comoros in Battlefield 4, sometimes I would be calling for a medic and ask for health, things like that, or ask for ammo instead. So the Comoros looks much more on point, a little bit easier for someone on consoles for sure. Then we have the weapon customization, so you don't have to spawn in to use your Weapon Plus system. You can customize the weapon before you spawn. So I'm hoping you'll have a holistic view of the weapon itself, and not just the different attachment views, so that would be a good addition to add here. But you can see, obviously, adding the different attachments, you can choose what you want in different slots, so you can add them to the Plus system. So I think you'll have 3 options per slot, depending on what you have unlocked. And then you can add those with the Plus system based on what you've pre-configured. You can also save loadouts, so similar to something like Call of Duty, you can have your own loadouts to switch to on the fly. Now, a lot of user interface changes here. You can see that they moved the kill feed from the right-hand side to the center, very similar to Battlefield 3. I know this is something a lot of the community members were asking for, so it honestly looks really clean. You see the sector majority lost at the top of the screen. They added a transparent background there, so it doesn't take up this huge blue or red block anymore, and then they added the text over that. You can also spot vehicles a lot easier. The flags, the flag, you can see C2, things like that aren't as large. They're easier to see. The one issue with the beta was that you couldn't tell where the flags were, so if I'm right there, you can see that there's flags in the background. In the beta, you couldn't tell where the heck the flags were, and you couldn't bring up a big version of the map to tell which direction you were going. So they've added a lot of that. You can see the kill cam there. Classic Battlefield kill cam, very similar to Battlefield 3, 4, everything we've been used to in the past. And then again, we see the minimap is always, or the compass is always available, as well as it seems to be radiated in red when you're in contact or close contact with troops around you. Now, they also added an infill scene here. So, infill scene here, we see it here on the map, Orbital. It's going to show you basically the squad that you're in with the different squad members, go into some stats, and then we have a really cool infill scene. Now, if you remember Call of Duty Modern Warfare, obviously, they had an infill scene for every multiplayer match, as well as especially the ground war matches. And this, for some reason, obviously reminds me a lot of that. And you'll see the similarities when we get into it, but definitely taking cues from a lot of things like, especially they're going to have an end of match one here coming up too. Definitely cues from a bunch of different games. One thing that just brings me back to Medal of Honor Warfighter, they would show off the top squad. So things like that, we've seen that in a lot of other games here as well. So here it looks like you'll be able to pick where you're going to be spawning. So you're going to pick your class. You see the countdown deploying in, and it's counting down on top. So you pick where you're going to be going here. And then what it'll do here is obviously it's going to cut to an infill scene. But obviously the map, the clarity, the UI here looks a lot better than it did in the beta, which is good news. Looks like they zoomed out a lot more from the overview of the map as well. And then we see this infill scene showing off basically and explaining. You'll have the voice in the background explaining what the key objective is for the map and why you're fighting. So definitely adding another level of immersion here, which is a really good thing to see. And again, here you can see why it reminds me of the ground war infill scenes from Call of Duty Modern Warfare, coming in on the transport helicopter and coming off like that. Very, very similar to Modern Warfare's ground war infills. Looks really good. And here we have the end of match summary. So you can see the match is going to be over here, and then we'll see the top squad and their stats. They'll be showcased, as well as different voice lines. You can see here, each specialist will have a voice line, as they're highlighted here as we go through the top squad for that match, and then you'll see that top squad, hopefully your squad, walking away with some stats about the squad as well, what your performance is. I'm sure we'll see something very similar, if not the exact same thing, for Hazard Zone as well. And then we have all the point accumulations and leveling progress that would take place. We saw some of this in the beta as well. Now, there was numerous other changes that they went into here in this blog post, which again, I'll link that down below for you guys to check out. Now, one thing that was additional for especially controller players is a lot more options for controller button layouts. A lot of things like with the helicopter controls, things like that. For some reason, for me at least on PS5, none of the controls worked. It was always just default for the helicopter controls. So they'll also allow you now to assign buttons for your preference. So you can have your own layouts. They have the crossplay functionality here, so you can invite friends from PC to consoles based on your EA account. And then they also added the big version of the map, the mini map, the big version that we've seen basically in every other Battlefield, which wasn't present here. So it's a good thing they added that here as well. Now, if we go back just to some other things going on here, we'll replay the specialist information here in the background. They did cover a lot of bug fixes, as well as that they made from the beta, as well as a lot of missing details that weren't in the beta, just because of they wanted a stable branch that didn't have any performance issues, so that the beta allowed them to get a lot of feedback. They also added more vehicles to different maps like this. The Orbital map obviously was a very large map. They added more tanks, things like that. So they made a lot of bug fixes. I'll let you guys go through that on the website. So basically any issue you would have had with the beta seems to have been fixed. Now, here in the special clip, we also saw the PP-19 Bison, or I think it's called the PP-24, something like that here. So we saw the Bison make an appearance. We already talked about the MP9, the Brugger and Thummit MP9. We looked at that pistol chassis for the Glock that we see. We don't see it used, but we do see it for Espinosa or Dozer in his secondary weapon choice. And we see a lot of different good information here with the new HUD elements and things like that, with the specialist gameplay, and the Saiga 12 making an appearance here as well. It looks like shotgun's looking really, really fun. We see a lot of the maps that we haven't seen yet. Obviously, we only played the beta for Orbital, so we see a lot of these additional maps, which just look beautiful. And I think all the new gameplay we're seeing here is really adding kind of the final layer of what the gameplay is supposed to be. And they go into the more detail in the blog post about why a lot of things were excluded from the beta branch of the game. And it allowed them to collect a lot of data on performance and tweak a lot of things, which they did. And you'll see a lot of this implemented on early access on November 12th, as well as when the final game comes out on, I guess for everyone else, on November 19th. So let me know what you guys think here down below. I think the specialists, now that we have the 5 additional specialists added here, it looks, I think we're going to see a lot better gameplay elements here. They did go into some more detail about being able to more easily identify friend versus foe. They're adding different color shades, things like that, to the specialist. So if you do have this situation like in the beta where there's the same specialist, it'll be easier to identify who's friend, who's foe. They'll also they added grenade indicators, they added nearby medics, things like that. Basic battlefield elements that we've known and loved from every game, making their way back into the final game. They just excluded a lot of those gameplay features and HUD elements, things like that, from the beta branch of the game. But definitely some exciting gameplay we're seeing here. And again, you can see the final version of the game coming together. I'm really excited to get into the different maps. I really did like the beta. However, just the one map and the limited weapons, just you can only do it so much. So all these different maps, vehicles, bunch of new weapons that we don't even know about yet to come. Obviously, we saw a lot of gameplay here with the NC-42, or the AC-42, which just looks amazing. Covered that in depth yesterday. I still stand by that this is some sort of bullpup Kalashnikov rifle, heavily inspired by the Tavor. Obviously, look at the Ukrainian Malik, basically a Ukrainian version of the AK-47 bullpup. They're the AKU-94, but they used that inspired by the Tavor and made a lot of improvements. So I'm thinking we're going to see something like this from Russia. However, with the burst option, it seems to have a hyperburst similar to the AN-94, and as well as like I said, the gas system looks reminiscent of the AK-107 as well. So we saw a lot of new weapons here, a lot of new gameplay features. Let me know what you guys think down below. Until next time, this is Buffer Gaming, out.